is SMNI News Channel. Truth that matters.
In the headlines, in the Philippines, Kingdom of Jesus Christ workers have spoken out against the Philippine National Police, accusing them of distorting the events of the recent raid on Glory Mountain in Tamayo, Calina, Davao City on June 10. CCTV footages and several videos that went viral vividly captured the violent raid, raising questions as to why the police is now filing complaints against the KOJC missionaries. Meanwhile, the KOJC reaffirmed its commitment to uncover the truth and seek justice for recent incidents. Despite facing oppression from the current administration, they remain dedicated to fulfill their founder, Pastor Apollo C. Quiboloy mission for nation building. On the other hand, a former U.S. intelligence officer has issued a warning to Filipinos about the escalating tensions in the West Philippine Sea. He urges the Philippines to remain vigilant and prepared as the region faces increasing pressure and potential conflicts over territorial disputes. And for our top global stories, Japan has signed a historic 10-year security agreement with Ukraine, aiming at strengthening military cooperation and bolstering regional stability. The signing took place on the sidelines of the Group of Seven G7 summit in Italy, marking a significant step in the relations between the two nations. And thousands of inmates from 51 detention centers across Venezuela participated in a 5-day hunger strike, protesting overcrowding, poor health conditions, and food shortages. Some inmates claimed they were imprisoned without being sentenced. Violence and humanitarian crisis continues to plague Venezuelan prison. I'm Deivid Lira. Newsline World starts now. First in the news, a former U.S. intelligence officer has a warning from Filipinos regarding the issue in the West Philippine Sea. Here's MJ Madahar with the report.
What happened?
Anti-war advocates in the United States recently gathered to warn the world about the impending threat of a nuclear Armageddon. A press conference organized by the Schiller Institute, experts and former U.S. government officials explained the dangers of nuclear war. Among the topics discussed was the role of the Philippines if a war breaks out over the West Philippine Sea issue. According to Scott Ritter, a former U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer, the U.S. is only using the Philippines against China.
We are using you. You are a tool, nothing but a tool, and when the tool ceases to be useful, we will discard you. And
Ritter, who also served as Chief Weapons Inspector for the United Nations, stated that the West Philippine Sea issue is being used by his government to outmaneuver China.
And discard you means usually after a war that devastates you. We are using you to gain some sort of momentary leverage over the Chinese. We will fail.
Ritter further argued that China will surely win against the U.S. in the West Philippine Sea, and the ones who will suffer the most will be the unsuspecting Filipinos.
The Chinese will win and you will be destroyed. End of story. It's high time the Filipino people pressure their government to start sitting down and engaging the Chinese government responsibly.
Currently, the Philippine government relies on what it calls an ironclad relationship with the U.S. government. Under the presidency of Bongbong Marcos Jr., the number of EDCA sites for Americans at Philippine military bases has increased. All of these are aimed at China.
The United States cannot fight and engage China and win. We will not beat the Chinese. We cannot beat the Chinese, and we know this. And yet we're using the Philippines to create the conditions of potential conflict with the Chinese. Please understand that for the Filipino people, this is a recipe for disaster. You think America is your friend.
Ritter advises the Philippine government not to be fooled. He says that Americans don't care about Filipinos. The truth is, they still look down on us, a people they colonized and enslaved for a long time.
China doesn't want war, and if you would engage China in diplomacy And as we've all indicated here, America has long since lost the skill set necessary to carry out diplomacy, but the Philippine people can reignite this, to relearn it, to use this skill to prevent a war. But if you continue to behave as colonial subjects, and I know that's a sore subject in the Filipinos, because you were the colonial subjects of America. We still view you as our colonial subjects. We don't like you, we don't care about you, we just want to use you. Grow up. Grow up and act responsibly. Take control of your own future. America is not here to help you. America is here only to use you until there's nothing left, and then we will discard you on the trash heap of history.
For Government of Philippines, MJ Mondeha, SMNI News.
The General Council of the Kingdom of Jesus Christ is deeply concerned by the government's non-stop harassment on Pastor Apollo C. Quiboloy and the SAT congregation, especially following the unhuman raids on its properties on Monday. The lawyer is convicted that this is connected to the good pastor's lawsuit in the United States, and attorney Michael J. Green says that the U.S. government has spent a lot of money on this case. He added that the measures taken by the government against Pastor Apollo C. Quiboloy and the Kingdom of Jesus Christ would not have been possible without the approval of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Sara Santos files this report.
And the investigation that was done by Risa Hontiveros. I mean, I read her resolution. I frankly thought I was in a third world country. I never saw anyone with the responsibility of a representative, someone that the people elect and they trust, to write the kind of resolution I read. I was almost speechless. That's why I felt compelled as general counsel to write Senator Zubiri about what that senator had done. And I sent her a copy, of course.
Speechless due to the chilling effect it has on the legislature of the Philippines. This was the reaction of the Kingdom of Jesus Christ, or KOJC's General Counsel, Attorney Michael J. Green, upon learning of Risa Hontiveros filing Senate Resolution 884 against Pastor Apollo C. Quiboloy. In an interview on SMNI News on Friday, June 14th, Attorney Green said this prompted him to write a letter to former Senate President Juan Miguel Mig Zubiri. The lawyer stressed that the accusations of Hontiveros were grossly misplaced allegations.
The horrible effect of what she did, and I had a copy of a resolution that caused me to have this chilling effect on me as general counsel to write your Senate president, was she basically said that the pastor had committed the crimes, that he was already guilty of the crimes. She says, considering that the crimes were committed within the jurisdiction of the Philippines. Her resolution, frankly, was a very chilling effect on all lawyers and should be very chilling effect on everyone in your legislature in the Philippines.
Attorney Green clarified in his letter to Senator Zubiri that should the allegations by informants be proven untrue, the KOJC and its ministry could be irreparably damaged. Meanwhile, former Chief Presidential Legal Counsel Attorney Salvador Panelo highlighted Hontiveros' reputation in the Philippines.
That lady senator you referred to earlier is notoriously known in this country to subject persons being investigated in her committee and besmirch their reputation and try them by publicity. The reason obviously is not in aid of the legislation, but for publicity, to make herself politically relevant.
Even before Hontiveros filed Senate Resolution 884, Pastor Apollo C. Quiboloy already had a lawsuit in the United States. Attorney Green believes that this is connected to the act of the Philippine Department of Justice reviving the good pastor's case against him in Davao City, which the court had already dismissed twice. It can be recalled that this is concurrent to the time both houses of the Philippine Congress was summoning Pastor Apollo. Meanwhile, Attorney Green stressed that the abuse of power by the current administration would not have been possible without the approval of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.
I have to say this, and it kind of hurts me a little bit to do this, but I don't think they ever would have done this if they didn't have the backing of your president. I mean, and I'm not talking about your former president, It was one of the great honors of my life having dinner with former President Duterte twice. But I don't think they ever would have got away with this unless they had 100% backing from President Marcos. I don't believe that. The people, in my view, the people in the Philippines deserve better.
Beginning the year 2021, Pastor Apollo C. Quiboloy has had a superseding indictment in America. Only now in the time of President Marcos Jr. that the good pastor is being extremely harassed by the government, as this did not happen during the Duterte administration nor previous administrations. On the other hand, Attorney Green is convinced that if former President Rodrigo Duterte believed even for a second the grave accusations against his friend Pastor Apollo C. Quiboloy to be true, then no relationship would have ever existed between the two.
I say this with complete conviction. If your former president believed for 1 second this pastor, I don't mean yours at your church, but Pastor Quiboloy was ever involved in sex trafficking, there wouldn't be a word said among the two of them. He would disown this pastor in a heartbeat. A man that I saw to be as righteous as I've seen him to be, and the love that people have for him. If he really believed this was going on and it wasn't a witch hunt, the relationship between Pastor Quiboloy and former President Duterte could never exist. And I believe that from the bottom of my heart.
Your perception of the former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte is 100% accurate.
In the end, Attorney Green still hopes that justice will prevail for Pastor Apollo C. Quiboloy, as there is no truth in the accusations thrown against him. The General Council of the Kingdom of Jesus Christ also believes that the good pastor will surely be able to overcome all these trials. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, this has been Sarah Santos, SMNI News.
Following the overkill operation by the Philippine National Police in various compounds of the Kingdom of Jesus Christ in Davao City, Senator Robin Padilla calls for Senate investigation on it. Carlo de la Peña has the news.
Did the Philippine National Police violate the human rights of the missionaries of the Kingdom of Jesus Christ when they carried out an inhumane and violent arrest warrant service in KOJC religious compounds last Monday, June 10th? This is what Senator Robin Hood Padilla wants to find out. Hence, he's calling for an investigation in the Senate to determine the occurrence of unnecessary and excessive force in the said operation. Padilla emphasized that serving warrants should ensure that the dignity of any individual, including the subject or target of the operation, is not compromised. He will formally file the resolution on Tuesday, June 18. In his resolution, Padilla wants the appropriate Senate committee to handle the investigation in aid of legislation into the violent operation by armed authorities in the religious compounds of KOJC, particularly in Davao City. He cited Article 2, Section 4 of the 1987 Constitution, which states that the primary responsibility of the government is to serve and protect the people. Meanwhile, Article 2, Section 11 of the Constitution recognizes the dignity of every person and ensures respect for human rights. He added that the PNP has a human rights-based policing or HRBP policy, and its guidebook emphasizes the obligation to respect human rights by not interfering with each person's rights. Based on reports, when the PNP operatives, including personnel from the Special Action Force or SAF and the Criminal Investigation and Detection Group or CIDG, entered KOJC to serve an arrest warrant, tensions arose and some missionaries were hurt. The fully armed police officers climbed the walls of the religious compound to search inside. They did this without a search warrant. In a statement, former President Rodrigo Duterte said that the incursion was a clear violation of the law and called it an overkill. Meanwhile, Padilla pointed out that the PNP had previously been criticized for using excessive force in serving warrants. This includes the arrest of an elderly environmental activist in Paquil, Laguna by 25 staff members in 2022 and the operation involving 18 CIDG personnel and 6 regional maritime unit members that led to the killing of Albuera Mayor Rolando Espinosa in 2016. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, this has been Carlo de la Peña, SMNI News.
The Department of Energy is already preparing for the theft posed by the impending El Niño. to ensure that the power supply would not be affected, even though no issues are seen in the power supply. This rain season, the DAS is still urging the public to be prudent in using electricity. Jason Rubrico tells us more.
The Department of Energy is preparing for the arrival of La Nina in the Philippines to ensure the country's energy security. According to Energy Secretary Rafael Lutilla, they are preparing for events that may affect the operations of energy facilities.
But what we are preparing for, of course, is the La Nina phenomenon, because the La Nina may bring rains, and again, we should brace ourselves for extreme events that may prejudice the operation of these plants.
The DOE prioritizes ensuring that transmission lines and distribution utilities are not affected by the expected heavy rains.
What we are really preparing would be for the yung securing natin ang ating mga distribution and transmission facilities, kasi these are vulnerable to typhoons and other calamities including floodings, no?
Assistant Secretary Mario Marasigan also mentioned that during the rainy season, it is difficult to restore failing power lines, especially since they are dangerous and they prioritize safety. Even though no issues are seen in the power supply with the arrival of La Nina, the agency still urges the public to use electricity prudently.
We still continue with our efforts to promote energy efficiency and conservation, despite the fact that there is lower demand, so that it becomes a habit for all of us, so that when an actual extreme event takes place, then we are in a better position to adjust to the needs of the entire economy.
The DOE's forecast for the next 2 years is positive, expecting an adequate power supply. According to Marasigan, additional thermal facilities with a capacity of 2,000 megawatts contracted by Meralco, additional coal thermal facilities in Maraveles, and a new power plant in Masinloc are expected. There is also an anticipated addition of 5,000 megawatts of renewable energy from various technologies.
We could say that anticipating the timely testing and commissioning and coming into commercial operation of these power plants, we would say that we're good, not only up to 2026, but until 2028.
For God and my beloved Philippines, I am Jason Rubrico, SMNI News.
Tensions in Italy's parliament turning to a fist fight as lawmakers clash over a bill on regional autonomy. Tricia Molina has the news.
What was supposed to be a vote on a bill that would grant 20 regions in Italy greater autonomy on how they spend their tax dollars transformed the Italian parliament into a scene of chaos. Tensions escalated after opposition lawmaker Leonardo Donna shoved an Italian flag to the coalition minister for regional affairs and autonomy to protest the bill. Donna has been rushed to the hospital in a wheelchair after receiving punches and is unable to breathe from the chaos. Lawmakers who oppose the proposal argue that giving some regions more autonomy than others would only worsen the north-south divide in Italy and bring more hardship to the impoverished south. The fistfight earned itself a place under the spotlight as Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni welcomed world leaders for the G7 summit. Reporting, this has been Tricia Molina, SMNI News.
Up next, the KOJC reaffirmed its commitment to uncover the truth and seek justice for recent incidents. Despite facing oppression from the current administration, they remain dedicated to fulfilling their founder, Pastor Apollo C. Quiboloy's mission for nation building. And Japan has signed a historic 10-year security agreement with Ukraine, aimed at strengthening military cooperation and boosting regional stability. The signing took place on the sidelines of the Group of Seven G7 summit in Italy, marking a significant step in the relations between the two nations. More news when Newsline World returns. Kingdom of Jesus Christ missionary workers can no longer tolerate the Philippine National Police twisting of the situation. It's clearly shown in social media how violently they raided Glory Mountain in Tamayo, Calina, Davao City. But why are the PNP now the one filing complaints? Let's find out the story in Hannah Jean Sancho's report.
Pastor Apollo Quiboloy has long been known for promoting nation building, including helping various sectors of society, even beyond his congregation. From children and youth, environmental care, disaster relief, combating NPA rebels through information campaigns and other programs promoting good governance. This, according to Pastor Apollo and the Kingdom of Jesus Christ, is their vow as part of their love for God and country. However, the past few months have been a significant challenge for Pastor Apollo and KOJC, as the government has responded differently, especially the blatant human rights abuses against missionaries on June 10, 2024, when armed forces of the PNP staff and CIDG simultaneously raided KOJC's religious compounds in Davao City and Sarangani province without any search warrants. What's even worse for KOJC is that the police turned the situation around and filed charges against the missionaries. Thus, in a press conference last Thursday, KOJC revealed what really happened.
We are just so thankful na mayroong CCTV camera and we know that cameras don't lie. Masakit na yung nangyari noong June 10, mas lalong masakit kasi lahat ng lumabas na news, baliktad sa mga nangyari. That is why, nandito kami ngayon upang magsalita at isiwalat ano talagang totoo na nangyari.
Numerous CCTV footage and videos taken by the missionaries themselves have circulated on social media, contradicting the authorities' statements. Meanwhile, despite the bitter experience of the church missionaries, KOJC remained steadfast. This was emphasized by Sister Eleanor Cardona, Executive Secretary of KOJC.
Although we were hurt, there's pain, we were affected so much until now, but that will not stop us. So, magpapatuloy tayo kung ano yung tinanim sa atin ng ating pinakamamahal na pastor, ang kanyang tinuro. Magpapatuloy tayo na nga, hindi tayo magiging katulad kung sino man yung gumawa ng masama. We will not be like them.
Sister Cardona added that KOJC will continue its mission as taught by their leader, Pastor Apollo Quiboloy.
As Filipinos, not only as KOJC members, but also as Filipinos, these are the values, no, that our beloved pastor has taught us, and this is what pastor is spreading on all of us. This is kaya nga si pastor is bent talaga on nation building, and that is his mission.
According to the KOJC official, just as Pastor Apollo leads and cares for the kingdom, they also want the same for the country.
Sa lahat, yun pa rin. We will still fight the good fight. We will stand for what is right, for what is just. Yun lang naman talaga ang hinihingi namin in behalf of our beloved pastor, sa lahat ng kingdom citizens, at maging sa lahat ng pinaka-ordinaryong citizen ng Pilipinas. Yung katarungan. Yun lang talaga. Yung good governance. At pag-aaruga sa lahat ng mga mamamayan. Which yun din ang ginagawa ni Pastor sa kingdom nation. Which is a nation of itself. Lahat tayo sufficient. Alam, kung hindi pa sa nakakaalam sa kingdom nation, this is the time na malaman nyo kung paano ang ginawa ni Pastor upang baguhin kami. Lahat ng mga kingdom citizens, yung mga bata na lumaki dito, pinaaral, pinakain, dinamitan. Hindi lang members, pero lahat tinutulungan ni Pastor. Yung mga masasamang elemento noon, mga drug addict, mga matay tao, dito nababago.
That's why despite experiencing oppression, they will remain strong and continue to do good.
We will stand strong, magiging doblehin pa natin yung kabutihan at dahil yun ang tinuro ng ating pinakamamahal na pastor.
On the other hand, former President Rodrigo Duterte, who is also the administrator of KOJC properties, has vowed that the police officers who violated the law will be held accountable. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, this has been Hannah Jane Sancho, SMNI News.
The possibility is high that the remains of the 3 overseas Filipino workers who died in a residential building in Kuwait on Wednesday will be returned to the country. That is also due to the Kuwaiti government's cooperation with the Filipinos who are affected by the fire. Carla Abellana reports.
Smoke inhalation caused the death of 3 OFWs in a residential building in Kuwait. Migrant Workers Secretary Hans Leo Kakdak stated that the 3 Filipinos who died were among the 11 Filipino workers affected by the fire, all working for the same Kuwaiti construction company housed in the building that caught fire. Kakdak added that he reaching out to all the families and relatives of the 11 OFWs, including the 2 in critical condition and the 3 deceased.
6 are safe. Of the 6, one of those was formerly hospitalized but is out of hospital. So 6 silang safe. And 2 are still being monitored sa intensive care unit.
Kakdak also promises financial assistance for the Filipino workers affected by the fire. However, he emphasized that their primary focus is on the immediate repatriation of the remains of the 3 OFWs. In addition to the assistance from the Philippine government, the Kuwaiti government will also provide support to the affected Filipinos.
The assistance from the company, the employer, as well as with respect to the deceased, the proceeds from life insurance.
Kakdak is confident that the remains of the 3 Filipinos will be returned without delay in the coming days.
Maagap naman on their side in terms of processing the necessary documentation. At tututukan po natin ito and may kumpiyansa ako na in due time makakauwi 13. Maybe as early as this coming week makakauwi 13.
Kuwait authorities reported that the fire started at about 4:30 a.m. on Wednesday, 12 June 2024 or 9:30 a.m. in the Philippines. The Kuwait Interior Ministry reports that 49 people were killed in the fire with scores injured. For God and my beloved Philippines, Carla Abellana, SMNI News.
Are you dreaming of working abroad? And your dream country is Europe? Be careful because there are many bogus agencies spreading nowadays. Just this Friday, a travel agency in Malolos, Bulacan was shut down by the Department of Migrant Workers, DMW. What they were doing was illegal recruitment of Filipino workers, offering fake jobs in Europe in exchange for a fake high salary. Carla Abellana is back for more news.
The Department of Migrant Workers shut down the operations of High Dreamer Travel and Tourist Services located in Catmon, Malolos, Bulacan before noon this Friday. The operation was led by DMW under Secretary Bernard Olalia and other officials of the department.
Ating pinapasara yung mga establishmento na nagre-recruit, nag-hire, nagre-refer, nagre-deploy, tumatanggap ng placement fee o hindi man ng mga workers para magtrabaho sa abroad. Napatunayan po na itong ahensya na ito, itong opisina na ito ay nagre-refer ng mga workers sa isang legitimate agency, bawal din. Kumbaga, nagsasang-agent po sila, bawal. Kaya ating papasara at kukuha tayo ng mga ebidensya kulang ebidensya para masampahan.
DMW Secretary Hans Leo Kakdak even mentioned that the Filipino community in Poland reported the illegal activities of High Dreamer to the Migrant Workers Office in Prague, or MWO Prague. MWO Prague, which has jurisdiction over Poland, conducted an investigation and found out that High Dreamer was offering jobs to the Filipinos in other countries through Facebook. High Dreamer does not have a valid license to offer jobs in other countries and is not a recruitment agency recognized by the DMW. Initial investigation shows that the agency was offering jobs such as production workers, agricultural workers, cleaners, restaurant workers, construction workers, and cleaners in various European countries, particularly in Croatia, with monthly salaries between 70,000 pesos and 80,000 pesos. It was learned that High Dreamer was collecting a processing fee of 100,000 pesos and a placement fee of 300,000 pesos from each applicant. The payment is non-refundable and can be settled in 3 installments. Officers and personnel of High Dreamer will face serious charges of illegal recruitment, be included in the DMW's list of persons and establishments with derogatory record, and be banned from participating in the government's overseas recruitment program. The closure of the travel agency is the 10th closure operation since January 2024 conducted by the DMW to crack down on illegal recruiters preying on OFWs and applicants who wish to work abroad. For God in my beloved Philippines, Carla Abeliana, SMNI News.
Thousands of inmates across Venezuela ended their 5 days hunger strike to protest prison conditions and delay procedures in handling their cases. Thousands of inmates from 51 detention centers nationwide participated in the 5 days hunger strike, which started on June 9. The protest involves prisoners from 17 of Venezuela's 23 states. Protesters called for improvement in prison conditions, with overcrowding, poor health conditions, and food shortages plaguing detention centers in the country. Some inmates claimed they were serving time in prison without even being sentenced. Venezuelan prisons continue to portray the scene of violence and humanitarian crisis as authorities and gang leaders fight for control over the detention centers. A 60-second commercial that featured a popular U.S. beverage was enough to unleash a wave of criticisms and spark calls of nationwide boycott in Bangladesh. Anissa de Guzman filed this report.
A Coca-Cola ad in Bangladesh sparked a massive debate and fury after social media users accused it of attempting to distance its association with Israel. Bangladesh, one of the largest Muslim countries in the world, has no diplomatic ties with Israel and has consistently campaigned for the right of the Palestinians to an independent state. Dozens of companies, including Coca-Cola, have seen a decline in sales in Muslim-majority countries such as Bangladesh, with consumers calling for a boycott on companies that have links with the Israeli government and the military since the start of the fighting in Gaza. In an attempt to boost its sales, the company released a 60-second commercial ad on Sunday, arguing that a beverage has been enjoyed for 138 years by people in 190 countries, including Palestine. The lead actor in the ad explained that Coca-Cola is not from that place, immediately understood by the audiences as Israel. The ad claimed that linking to that place was a misinformation. It did not take long before the ad received massive criticisms as social media users accused it of trying to distance itself from Israel. Coca-Cola, a beverage that earned massive fame for decades, is a product of the United States. Washington, on the other hand, is a strong ally of Israel, known for allotting a massive budget and weapons to the Jewish state. Bangladesh is one of the 29 member states of the United Nations that do not recognize the state of Israel. Reporting from Thailand, I'm Anissa de Guzman, your global citizen correspondent for God and our beloved country, the Philippines.
Japan signed a 10-year security agreement with Ukraine on the sidelines of the Group of Seven or G7 summit in Italy. Ria Saito reports.
Japan pledged a long-term support for Ukraine worth $4.5 billion that will last for a decade. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky hailed the 10-year agreement signed with Japan, which covered security and defense assistance, humanitarian aid, technical and financial cooperation, as well as treatment of injured Ukrainian service members. Zelensky thanked the Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida for his country's support and showed interest in deeper ties with the East Asian nation. He hailed the long-term agreement signed with his Japanese counterpart as the first of its kind signed with a non-NATO country.
Сьогодні ж є дуже перспективна безпекова угода з Японією. Це перша така угода з країною з-поза меж НАТО, з Тихоокеанського регіону. Ми взагалі вивели відносини з Японією на такий зміст, який мають далеко не всі європейські країни, Україна дуже це цінує. Ми працюємо разом і в безпековій сфері, і в політичній, і в економічній. Зафіксовано 4,5 мільярди доларів підтримки від Японії на цей рік. Ми зацікавлені також, щоб Україна та Японія були максимально партнерами у відбудові, в поверненні нормального життя нашим людям. І це буде. Ми про це також домовились. Шановний пане прем'єр-міністре, дорогі Фуміо, весь японський народи, я дуже вам дякую.
Zelensky also held talks with the managing director of the International Monetary Fund, Kristalina Georgieva, where they discussed support for Ukraine, such as attracting investments for recovery and business development. The group of 7 leaders agreed to provide a loan worth $50 billion to Ukraine using interest from frozen Russian assets. An estimated $300 billion in Russian funds are being held mostly in European banks, which G7 leaders are debating on how to use. The G7 leaders also pledged fighter jet coalition, pilot training, aircraft delivery, advanced Western air defenses, and long-range capabilities using frozen Russian assets. Senior U.S. officials say the money will be frozen until the Russians pay for the damage caused by the war. The cost of reconstruction caused by the war in Ukraine is estimated at more than $480 billion over the next decade, according to the World Bank. Additionally, Zelensky signed a bilateral agreement with U.S. President Joe Biden on the sidelines of the G7 summit in Italy. More than 30 countries have taken part in a joint declaration to provide long-term support for Ukraine in a joint declaration issued by G7 in July 2023. Reporting from Tokyo, Japan, I'm Ria Saito, your global citizen correspondent for God and our beloved country, the Philippines.
Attacks launched by Houthi rebels in the Red Sea affected about 65 countries, according to the latest report presented by the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency. Grataru Omori reports.
Yemen's Houthi rebels vowed to escalate attacks in the Red Sea, targeting maritime vessels linked to Israel. The attacks, seen as a show of support toward Palestinians in Gaza, have affected the global maritime industry as the fighting entered its 8th month. U.S. intelligence claimed the attacks impacted the interests of 65 countries as well as 29 major energy and shipping companies. The group has used missile, drone, and even unmanned surface vessels to attack commercial shipping passing through the strategic waterway, which escalated since the Israel-Hamas war erupted on October 7, 2023. Apart from Israel's allies, U.S. and Britain, nations with friendly ties to the Houthis such as Turkey, Russia, China, and its purported benefactor, Iran, have been caught in the crossfire based on the U.S. intelligence report. However, a senior Houthi official in January promised that the rebel group will not attack Russian, Chinese, and German ships passing through the Red Sea. A U.S.-led military operation known as Prosperity Guardian was launched in December 2023 to counter Houthi attacks. Among the most recent attacks launched by the Houthi was targeting the Liberian-flagged Greek-owned bulker Tutor, which caused severe flooding and damage to the vessel's engine room. It was Houthis' first ever successful attack with an unmanned sea drone. The Red Sea is one of the world's most strategic waterway linking Asia, Africa, and Europe. About 40% of trade between Asia and Europe and 10% of worldwide trade passes through the critical maritime corridor. The Houthi attacks in the Red Sea are being watched closely not only by Iran and the UAE, but also the international community affected by the reverberating tensions in the Middle East. Reporting from Dubai, I'm Gatero Omorio, Global Citizen Correspondent for SMNA News Channel.
Iran filed hundreds of cases on people accused of celebrating late presidential Ibrahim Raisa's death following a tragic helicopter crash last month. Melchizedek Cadiz has the news.
More than 200 cases have been filed amid an ongoing crackdown on Iranians who rejoiced instead of mourned the late Iranian president's death. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi's death sparked not only official mourning but also celebrations among Iranians who opposed his rule inside and outside of the country. Citizens expressed their joy through fireworks, memes, poetry, dancing, and even shared sweets and chocolates, among other things. For activists, Raisi was known as the Butcher of Iran for his alleged involvement in the mass execution of thousands of political prisoners in 1988. He died in a helicopter crash along with other high-ranking officials while returning from Azerbaijan on the 19th of May. Isfahan's revolutionary prosecutor cited spreading falsehood and offensive content and destabilizing society's psychological stability as grounds for legal action. 6 candidates are competing to replace Raisi as the nationwide campaign to find his successor continues before the official elections on the 28th of June. Reporting from Kuwait, I am Melchizedek Cadiz, your global citizen correspondent for God and for our beloved country, the Philippines.
Russia laid out its conditions before agreeing to enter a ceasefire with Ukraine. Moscow presented the conditions as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky rubbed elbows with the Western allies and Italy in an attempt to gain more supporters for its ongoing war with Russia. Trisha Molina has the news.
Russian President Vladimir Putin announced he is willing to order an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine and start negotiations provided that several conditions are met. These include Ukrainian troops gradually withdrawn from 4 eastern regions partially occupied by Russia, and for Kyiv to give up its plans of joining NATO. Putin made the demand as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky sat down with a group of 7 leaders in Italy, also attended by other observer states and nations in alliance with the West. Zelensky aims to garner more global support by hosting the Ukraine Peace Summit in Switzerland, scheduled on the 14th and 15th of June. The Ukrainian leader has been traveling to different countries worldwide to boost support and campaign its peace proposals to end the war with Russia, to which Moscow has rejected. Fighting between Russia and Ukraine has surpassed 2 years with no end in sight. Reporting, this has been Trisha Molina, SMNI News.
And before we end, may you be inspired with the words of the Sun. The avenues of excellence are unlimited. And that's all for this edition. For more updates, you may visit smninewschannel.com or follow us on our official social media accounts on Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. For God and Country, the Philippines, I'm Deivid Lira, and this is Newsline World.
Subscribe to SMNI News Channel and turn on the notification bell to keep you up to date. Also visit our official social media accounts and join our community on Viber and Telegram.